Seguimos en CARICAM 2016, nos visita Julian Wilkins, que es de Digicel y también es el presidente de Canto, con quien vamos a estar hablando sobre regulación en el Caribe en inglés, porque él habla en inglés, y nos va a contar un poco una presentación que acaba de realizar en este congreso sobre este asunto. Julian, welcome once again, one more year to telesemana.com.
Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure to have you here. So you had just recently a presentation this morning?
Yes.
On regulation?
Yes, I actually presented representing Canto, the Caribbean Network Operators Organization.
Which also has an event.
Yes, we actually have two events. Okay. There's the AGM and Mini Conference, which is towards the end of January 2017.
Right.
Then we have our major conference, which is the 16th to the 21st of July 2017.
Okay.
In the Dominican Republic, Punta Cana.
Okay,
I'm really looking forward to that. I hope you can. Hope you can be there.
Okay, I'd love to. I have to check my schedule, but
yes,
I'd love to go. So you had a presentation. What were you trying to tell the audience here? I mean, what was your update on the situation in the Caribbean?
So actually, there's been quite some movement. I would say positive movement on the regulation side in the Caribbean. For one, Canto it actually has what we call a code of practice for safeguarding the open internet. Now, in essence, what this means is that operators have agreed not to block over-the-top players.
Okay, so you're doing your own neutrality kind of law, but self-imposed.
Perfect. Okay. Self-regulation.
Self-regulation.
This is what we got over 30 operators to sign the pledge, and Cable Wireless Communications, Digicel, so you had the large regional players, but not only that, you had the independents like Telem from St. Martin, like Innovative from USVI. So even the small operators have signed up to this. And it's actually quite historic, because it's not often you can get operators to agree to anything, but we've all come together and demonstrated that we can self-regulate. And it's the first time in the English-speaking Caribbean that we've actually achieved this. And on my panel I had two regulators, one from Costa Rica and the other from Curacao. And with our discussion, I got out of them that they were supportive of self-regulation, because they saw it actually helps the regulator to do its job. And as we work towards this convergence, it's perhaps more critical that regulators work with operators and collaborate. One of the key findings I got out of it as well, we were looking at over-the-top players, and I put two options to the panel. Should we look at taxation of over-the-top players, or is it more easier to deregulate the current operators, perhaps over a period of time? And you know, I got a sense there that they were more in favour of the latter.
Which is easier, as you said.
It's easier, and plus it's something that we can work together on as well.
Do you think that perhaps operators in the Caribbean agreed on not blocking the OTTs because of the fact that perhaps in the Caribbean still we see the lack of content and applications developed in the region, and thus, you know, operators think as OTTs as an opportunity to expand data services rather than a competition?
Well, that's a very good question, but I think it's actually troubling for some operators, depending on where their network is. Because in the Caribbean, we don't have one regulator. There's possibly nearly 20 different operators, each which at different stages, and perhaps doing their own thing. We have challenges, for example, with the Ict regulator, who wants to introduce strict net neutrality law rules, which means you treat each bit the same, and you can't then have special services, for example.
Like zero rating, or?
Yes, zero rating, or let's say a hospital a doctor wants to operate remotely.
Okay.
So
that data needs to be
that would
treated.
be high quality, and perhaps for that service they would pay a little bit extra. Well, under the strict net neutrality rules, that would not be possible. So we had that discussion in there, and I think because it's so different, not all the regulators are looking at that, strict net neutrality, but we are seeing some. So because when the environment is not right, then you're not going to get that innovation. If the regulatory environment is correct,
Then
you can then get more innovation. We want to see more local content. I actually believe I'm seeing it's beginning. I was in Trinidad, and one of the operators there, they actually have a studio which encourages local people to come in and produce local content.
Okay.
So we're beginning to see it, and I believe certainly in Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad, fibre to the home being rolled out. I think Digicel mentioned in a presentation yesterday they'd actually got over 100,000 customers fibre to the home in 1 year.
Okay.
So we are beginning to see it. People are beginning to see bandwidth. Of course, it could be a lot better, but we as operators, what we're asking for is to set that environment, make it such that we can actually compete with the over-the-top players and level that playing field. I think so. We have a way to go.
Okay, so the net neutrality self-regulation that the operators are embracing obviously is not extreme. So you are So you are saying we are not going to block any OTTs.
Correct.
But at the same time, we need to be more flexible so we can actually develop different offerings and foster innovation. So it's a middle ground between.
It's a middle ground. And I must say I was very pleased with the two regulators, one from Curacao, the other from Costa Rica, they like that concept. So they
agreed with.
Yeah, they agreed with that middle ground. Let's collaborate more. And you asked, what's triggered the operators. I think the operators, know that we have to change our business model. We are looking at that,
Yeah. So you need to have some tools to maneuver.
You need a little help sometimes from the regulators just to make it a little easier for us to compete.
Right. Now, when it comes to regulating the OTTs, it's not just net neutrality. Some people are saying, because WhatsApp now offers voice and you have these different services, it used to be that operators had to have some responsibilities with that, like, emergency calls and so on. Now some regulators are saying, well, should we also impose such responsibilities to OTTs? I don't know if in the Caribbean this is also a discussion.
This is a very good point, because in essence, if you look at what the GSMA, the association is saying, which is the worldwide operator, represents all operators, we want same rules for the same service.
Yeah.
And if you apply, that's a principle, and I think going forward we probably need to have that.
Okay.
So I totally agree with what you're saying.
I'm just saying that the discussion is there. I'm not saying I agree, but
well,
what I'm saying is that the discussion is there.
Yes,
I haven't stated yet my.
You're quite right. I maybe misunderstood.
No, that's fine.
But in essence, we do feel that we need this collaboration. As operators, we've got to provide 911 emergency services.
Location, if there's.
Right.
Yeah.
OT, over-the-top players, no such. So we're asking then, so we should look at that. Should we have to provide that? Is that a genuine question going forward? And that to me is part of the deregulation that we could look at.
Okay, so you were saying that it would be easier perhaps to lower the responsibilities we're imposing to operators for the same services rather than going to the OTTs and say, hey, you need to offer also this.
Google the giant internet, I won't name them, the giant internet operators. They're not going to take us on. They're making so much billions of dollars.
They're
not paying, taxes in the Caribbean or Central America. So I think it's something which we should look at, and it should be done. We're not suggesting we do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're suggesting let's look at how we're regulated. Can we reduce over a period of time, like a glide path situation.
That's interesting because I don't think I have heard, and I don't know if this is in the Caribbean only, but maybe it's worldwide and I haven't noticed that operators asking, instead of regulating these guys, deregulate us more, which I think it's pretty interesting to explore at least.
Let's explore it. Let's at least have a discussion. I will say one of the things I mentioned. There's a new committee being formed. It's called a Collaboration ICT Committee.
In the Caribbean?
In the Caribbean. They've got their first real meeting in December in Trinidad.
Okay.
And what's interesting with this, because for many years we've been talking about the same issues, net neutrality, OTT, infrastructure sharing, roaming charges, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. So this committee has been tasked to look at these from a very high level. And Canto has been invited to, it can send 3 representatives, 3 of its operators to it. So you've got Canto, you've got the Caribbean Telecoms Union, and you've got senior officials within government from around the region. So it's kind of a small committee, about 14, 15 people. And they're going to start to look at these issues.
Okay.
And I think that in itself is a real development. Canto very pleased to participate in it because it goes past the discussion. This committee, it's all about how we're going to implement. Because we, perhaps have been discussing these things for so long, and we don't get anywhere. So it's now time to up the bar and see if we can really make a difference.
Something pragmatic. Are you looking at any regulation around the world that it's kind of a model for you? I mean, is there any country or market that you've seen something in relation to this OTT operators ecosystem and regulation that it's something that you would say is the way to go?
I would say certainly in Australia, for example, they've taken the let's see approach.
Okay.
They're not rushing to implement net neutrality, for example. I much prefer what I'm seeing the European Union approach. And when I look at the Caribbean, where we have so many islands, where they are not, they're looking at net neutrality, but it's not what I call strict net neutrality. They would allow special services, for example,
to have some preference.
To have some preference. Whereas on the US side, that's quite strict with the FCC.
Are they still fighting for that? Because I think the operators are still in the courts, no?
The operators are in the courts, you're quite right. But what's interesting is the change of president. And we know that particular party has a different view on regulation. In fact, they are for less regulation. And in fact, if you look, they've actually made statements against net neutrality. So I think it's a case of watch that space on the US side, because that is definitely changing.
Excellent.
So,
all right, well, Julian, we're going to leave it here because we are running out of time.
Yes.
Great discussion on OTTs, and I think it's quite interesting your point of view on deregulating operators rather than regulating OTTs.
Yes.
Interesting view.
Thank you. Great. Thank
Pleasure
you
having
very
you
much.
again.
You're welcome.